commissioner laughed at the fat man who didn't fit in the chair of the plane until he found out who he was. Transatlantic Airlines Flight 447 was about Miami to Chicago when the executive section became a circus of public humiliation. Marcus Thompson, 42, an aerospace engineer with 168 pounds distributed on his wide and strong body, was trying to settle in the third seat. Her face was not only the weak air conditioning but by the growing tension while adjusting the seatbelt that clearly did not close at her waist. "Sir, you'll need a belt extension," said Vanessa Clark's main commissioner, with a sharp smile that didn't come to the eye. She had that kind of impeccable and cold beauty, blonde hair stuck in a perfect bun, calculated makeup, navy uniform without a single wrinkle. His golden badge of senior commission shone under the cabin lights as a superior trophy. Marcus nodded silently, accustomed to this kind of situation. "Of course, thanks." But Vanessa was not interested in solving the problem. She was interested in making a show. Actually, she tilted her head, evaluating him from the top to the underprivileged contempt. "I don't know if an extension will solve. You are taking up too much space." Passengers around they started turning their heads. Some diverted their embarrassed eyes. Others took their cell phones, already anticipating the viral entertainment that was about to happen. "I bought this seat, ma'am," Marcus answered calmly, his severe and controlled voice. "Can I see the extension, please?" Vanessa released a short and cruel giggle. "Lord, the Lord is overflowing to the next seat. This is a violation of the company's policies." She crossed her arms, her tone of voice deliberately rising to all hear. "I'll need to ask you to land or buy a second seat." The silence in the cabin was deafening. "I booked this seat 3 weeks ago," Marcus said, every word measured accurately, "and I paid the full value of the executive class, $1,200. "Then you should have bought 2, Vanessa said, now without any attempt to disguise the poison in her voice, "or considered your physical limitations before trying to fly as a normal person." A passenger in the back row let out a, "My God," muffled. A teenager filmed discreetly. Marcus closed his eyes for a second. It took a deep breath. He thought of his 9-year-old son, Daniel, waiting for him in Chicago. The boy had a science presentation at school, a project on aerodynamics that Marcus had helped build. Daniel had him. He thought of the 127 aerospace patents he had registered, in 19 years projecting security systems for commercial aircraft, including, ironically, the seats of this exact airline. But Vanessa didn't know that. No one there knew. "Madam, I understand you're just following a protocol," Marcus said, opening his eyes. "But I'm within my rights as a paying passenger." Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically and turned to the pilot watching the cabin door. "Captain Morrison, we need your permission to remove this passenger." The captain, a thin man in his early 50s with gray hair, evaluated the situation with a tired expression. "Sir, I'll have to ask you to cooperate," he said mechanically, clearly wanting to avoid delay in the flight. Marcus looked around, saw the cameras, saw the eyes. He saw injustice unfolding in real time, but he also saw something no one else noticed. A small crack in the structure of the upper luggage compartment just above Vanessa, a manufacturing defect he knew a lot very well. "Okay," Marcus said finally, getting up with dignity. "I'll land." Vanessa smiled victoriously. "Wise decision, sir." But while Marcus walked down the hallway, he stopped briefly beside Vanessa and said lowly, just for her to hear, "I hope this flight will be quiet, Miss Clark." Something in his tone, calm but meaningful, made Vanessa's smile hesitate for a second fraction. Marcus landed under the eyes of dozens of passengers. Some seemed relieved, others ashamed to witness that. No one applauded, but no one protested. And as he descended the boarding ladder, Vanessa had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. What she didn't know either is that Marcus Thompson was not just another fat passenger humiliated in public. He was the aerospace security engineer at Transatlantic Airlines, and Flight 447 was about to become a nightmare she would never forget. Marcus pulled his cell phone from his pocket and typed a quick message. "I need the report D and full flight maintenance 447, upper compartment 3A3F, now." The answer came in seconds. "Submitting. Any problem?" Marcus looked through the panoramic window of the airport. Outside, the Boeing 737 shone under Florida's sun, ready to take off. He typed slowly, "Not yet, but it will have." If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the outcome of this turnaround. As Marcus walked down the Miami airport terminal, his heavy backpack over his shoulder and humiliation still burning in the chest, Flight 447 taxied to the takeoff track. Inside the aircraft, Vanessa Clark walked down the hall with a victorious smile on her face. She had won another battle against troubled passengers, as she used to call private conversations with other commissioners. "You were hard with that guy," Bradley commented, the assistant commissioner, a 26-year-old who worked with Vanessa just 3 months ago. Hard? Vanessa rolled her eyes as she checked her seatbelts. I was professional. That man was a risk of security. Full stop. He looked, I don't know, like, polite, Bradley insisted, lowering his voice. Vanessa stopped and looked at him with that expression that Bradley had already learned to fear. Bradley, you are new to this, so I'll give you a free tip. People like that always try to play the education card. It is emotional manipulation. She crossed her arms. If we let it pass once, it becomes a mess. Rules exist for one reason. Bradley nodded quickly, but something at the bottom of his eyes suggested that he was not fully convinced. In the command booth, Captain Morrison finished the latest pre-fu procedures. That passenger you have removed, said the co-pilot, James Chen, a 15-year-old veteran. Didn't he cause any problems? None, Morrison replied, adjusting the controls. Said quietly, Vanessa dealt with it. Vanessa always deals with everything, James murmured, with a touch of irony that Morrison pretended not to see. The plane gently took off at 2:47 p.m., rising through Florida's blue skies towards the Midwest. Most passengers had already forgotten the incident. Some still commented in a low voice. The teenager who filmed everything had already posted the video on his social networks with the caption, "Fat face expelled from the plane." But while the Boeing 737 gained altitude, Marcus Thompson was sitting in a private room at the Transatlantic Airlines Administrative Office at Miami International Airport. At the desk ahead, 3 computer screens displayed technical data, maintenance reports, and flight records. Beside him was Jennifer Reeves, his direct assistant and junior aerospace engineer. "Here's what you asked," Jennifer said, passing a physical folder and pointing to the center screen. "Full Flight Report 447. Last structural inspection was 2 weeks ago. All within the standards." Marcus didn't take his eyes off the screen. Its fingers typed quickly by accessing deeper layers of the maintenance system. And the upper compartments? 3A to 3F went through visual inspection. No reported anomaly. Visual, Marcus repeated, with a tone that Jennifer knew well. It was the tone of someone who did not trust surface inspections. It expanded the technical image of compartment 3A. The cracking he had seen was small, almost invisible, but it was there. "Jennifer, how many hours of flight this plane has since the last complete structural inspection?" Jennifer clicked on another tab. 487 hours. Marcus closed his eyes. It took a deep breath. "The protocol recommends inspection every 500 hours. Jennifer continued, confused. "They are on time." "I know," Marcus said calmly, "but this specific series, the B447, has an early fatigue history. I wrote the report in 2021 recommending more frequent inspections, every 300 hours, not 500. Jennifer widened her eyes. "Did they implement the change?" Marcus did not respond immediately. He opened another window on the computer and accessed the corporate guidelines files. His fingers flew down the keyboard until he found the document he was looking for. Technical Report 2021 A47. Maintenance recommendations for Series B447. Status: budget approval pending. "No," Marcus finally said, his voice low and controlled. "They didn't implement." Jennifer felt a shiver up the spine. "Marcus, do you think that plane is in danger?" Marcus turned his chair and looked straight at her. "I don't know, but I can't ignore it." He took the phone and dialed an internal number. The call was answered in the second touch. "Operations Department, here is Robert." "Robert, here is Marcus Thompson. I need you to connect immediately. COM, Flight 447, emergency frequency." There was a break. "Lord, is there any active emergency?" "Not yet," Marcus said, "but I need to talk to Captain Morrison now." Understanding. Connecting. While Marcus waited, Jennifer watched in silence. She had known Marcus 5 years ago. He had seen him resolve crises, disarm conflicts, and save lives with his technical decisions, but he never saw him so tense. Captain Morrison's crackling voice finally echoed through the speaker. "This is Morrison. Who speaks?" "Captain, here is Marcus Thompson, Transatlantic Security Engineer." There was a long silence on the other side. "Mr. Thompson?" Morrison sounded confused. The Lord was not the passenger who—" "Yes," Marcus interrupted calmly. "It was me." Another silence, heavier this time. "Captain, I need you to make an immediate visual inspection of the upper luggage compartment in Section 3A to 3F, specifically in metal fixing frames." "Sir, we are at cruise altitude. Everything is working normally." "I understand," Marcus said, keeping his calm. "But this aircraft has a history of structural fatigue in this specific area. I need you to trust me." Morrison hesitated. Across the line, Marcus could hear the buzz of the engines and the muffled sound of conversations in the command booth. "With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, you were removed from this flight for security reasons. Now I am asking me to create unnecessary panic among passengers based on, what? A suspicion? Marcus clenched his teeth. He knew how it sounded. He knew exactly how Morrison was playing the situation. Humiliated engineer trying to sabotage the flight out of revenge. Captain, I'm not asking you to abort the flight. I am asking for a simple visual inspection. 2 minutes. If there is nothing, great. But if there is, if any, you will be the first to know. Morrison interrupted, clearly annoyed. I'll ask the commissioner to take a look. Anything else? Marcus closed his eyes. He could insist. Could use your corporate authority to force a complete inspection, but that would raise questions, would generate reports, and possibly it would cost your job. No, Captain, thanks. The call was closed. Jennifer looked at Marcus with concern. And now? Marcus got up from his chair and walked to the office window of the office. Outside, planes took off and landed in a chaotic metal and fuel ballet. Somewhere in that infinite sky, Flight 447 was heading towards Chicago. Now, Marcus said slowly, let's hope I'm wrong. But something at the bottom of his stomach said he wasn't. And what Marcus didn't know is that, at that very moment, 10,000 meters in altitude, Vanessa Clark was casually walking down the corridor of Flight 447, serving drinks and smiling at the passengers. She went through the third compartment without even looking up. Microscopic crack had grown 2 more millimeters from takeoff and continued to grow. Marcus Thompson spent the next 2 hours in the administrative office of Transatlantic Airlines, doing something that few engineers would do, preparing to be completely wrong. He wanted to be wrong, prayed to be wrong, but his 19-year experience said the opposite. Jennifer had gone out to fetch coffee, leaving Marcus alone with 3 computer screens, dozens of technical reports, and a growing weight in the chest. He opened the B447 series files again, reviewing every detail he already knew by color. Fatigue for cyclic stress, microfractures in metal joints, accelerated wear in pressurized environments. All this was known science. All this he had documented. All this the company had filed as a pending budget analysis, which in corporate practice meant, let's ignore until something goes wrong. Your cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Daniel, his son. Dad, are you going to arrive in time for my presentation tomorrow? Marcus looked at the message for a long time before answering. I'll be there, champion. I promise. He didn't know if he could keep this promise. At that very moment, at 10,000 meters in altitude, Flight 447 crossed Georgia's airspace. Most passengers slept, watched movies, or worked on their laptops. The turbulence was minimal. The sky was clear. Vanessa Clark was in the small resting space of the crew checking her cell phone. The video that the teenager had posted on Marcus's expulsion already had 47,000 views. She rolled through the comments with a satisfied smile. She did the right. Rules are rules. Finally, someone with the courage to enforce policies. If it doesn't fit, buy 2 seats. Simple as that. But not all comments were favorable. This is pure discrimination. What a shame. She humiliated that man in public. Horrible. Does anyone know the name of this commissioner? You need to be fired. Vanessa rolled her eyes and locked her cell phone. People on the internet always had an opinion on everything. She had done her work. Full stop. Bradley entered the rest space with a worried expression. Vanessa, the captain asked you to check the upper compartments in the executive section. Why? She asked, without taking her eyes off the mirror where she retouched the lipstick. Something about a routine inspection. He gave no details. Vanessa sighed dramatically. Of course, because I have nothing more to do. She took a small flashlight and walked to the executive section. Most passengers slept. The third seat, where Marcus should be sitting, was empty, still marked as not sold in the system. Vanessa pointed the flashlight for the upper compartment, checked the locks, checked the hinges. Everything seemed normal, solid, safe. She did not see the 4mm crack hidden under the metal frame. All right here, she reported for the communicator. No visible problem. In the command cabin, Morrison nodded pleased. Copy. Thank you, Vanessa. He called the company's internal communication frequency. Operations, here is Flight 447. Visual inspection completed in compartment 3A. No anomaly detected. Inform Engineer Thompson, who was worried unnecessarily. Across the line in Miami, operator Robert passed the message to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, Captain Morrison reported that the inspection was done and nothing was found. Aircraft is operating normally. Marcus closed his eyes and released the air he didn't even realize he was holding. Understanding. Thanks. Jennifer returned with 2 coffees and put one on Marcus's table. Then, all good? Apparently yes, Marcus said, but his voice had no conviction. Jennifer sat next to him and drank a sip of coffee. Marcus, you did what you could, warned the captain. They made the inspection. If they found nothing, there is probably nothing. Probably, Marcus repeated. You can't carry the weight of all flights on your back. especially not after what happened today. Jennifer hesitated before continuing. That commissioner, Vanessa, what she did was horrible. You have every right to file a formal complaint. Marcus took a long sip of bitter coffee. It's not the first time, Jennifer. It won't be the last one. But you are the chief engineer. She humiliated you in public without even knowing who you were. Exactly, Marcus said calmly, not knowing who I was. Which means she would do the same thing with anyone else that came into that plane. Jennifer was silent. She knew he was right. Marcus turned the chair back to the computer and started typing. What are you doing? Jennifer asked. Preparing a complete report on the B447 series. Maintenance history, previous recommendations, technical data, all. I will send to the board with a copy to the regulatory agency. They will hate you for that. Probably, Marcus said with a half smile. But they will have to deal. I can't ignore a known structural problem just because someone doesn't want to spend money on preventive maintenance. Jennifer noted Marcus to work. Its fingers flew down the keyboard, organizing data, compiling evidence, building an irrefutable technical case. He was not doing this for revenge. I was doing it because it was the right thing. While Marcus worked, his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Mr. Thompson? Here is Amandarios, from the legal department of Transatlantic. Marcus frowned. Yes, Amanda. How can I help? Actually, sir, I'm calling you to inform you about an incident that was brought to our attention. A video on social networks showing its removal from Flight 447 early today. Marcus closed his eyes. I understand. The video is spreading quickly, sir. We are receiving several complaints and negative comments about the conduct of Vanessa Clark, Commissioner. The board would like to talk to you about the incident. Not necessary, Marcus said quickly. I don't want to climb this. It was just a misunderstanding. There was a break from the other end of the line. Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, this is no longer just about the Lord. We are talking about corporate reputation, possible discrimination, passenger treatment policies. The board needs its version of the facts. Marcus sighed heavily. He is well. When do you want to gather? Tomorrow morning, if possible. 9 o'clock, corporate office in Atlanta. I'll be there. The call was closed. Jennifer looked at Marcus with an expression that mixed concern and something like satisfaction. Are they going to fire her? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. But that's not what worries me now. He vault or looking at the computer screens. Flight 447 data still flashed on the center screen. Altitude, 10,200 meters. Speed, 850 kilometers h. Status, normal. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But Marcus Thompson had not become security engineer relying on appearances. He opened a new window on the computer and started entering an email to Captain Morrison. Not an emergency alert, only an additional technical recommendation. Something that could be ignored, but would be officially registered. Captain Morrison, on an additional precaution, recommend complete structural inspection of compartments 3A, 3F as soon as the aircraft land in Chicago. Reason: early fatigue. Technical history in this specific series. Detailed reports attached. Attentively, Marcus Thompson, Chief Engineer Security. He attached 47 technical documentation pages and squeezed send. Jennifer read the email over her shoulder. Do you really think there's something wrong with that plane? Marcus did not respond immediately. He looked through the panoramic window of the airport, watching the navigation lights of an aircraft taking off on the distant track. I really hope not, he said finally. But as he spoke, his cell phone vibrated again. It was an automatic alert of the fleet monitoring system. Active flights 127 maintenance alerts, 3 Flight 447, internal pressurization floating, within normal parameters but recommended monitoring. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Pressurization fluctuation was common. It happened on almost every flight. It usually meant nothing, but in an aircraft with potential structural fatigue, it could mean that something was giving in. Marcus got up from his chair so fast that he almost overthrew coffee. Jennifer, I need you to get me a direct line with the Chicago control tower. Now. What it was? What happened? I don't know yet, Marcus said, his voice firm but urgently. But let's find out before it's too late. And while Jennifer ran to make the call, Marcus looked at the computer screen once more. Flight 447 continued to cross the American sky, carrying 189 people who had no idea that their lives could be in the hands of a fat engineer who had been humiliated and expelled from his own flight a few hours earlier. An engineer who was now running against time to save the same people who watched his humiliation in silence. The floating pressurization warning was no coincidence. Marcus knew this at the bottom of his soul, as Jennifer finally could connect him directly to the Chicago control tower. Chicago Tower, here is Marcus Thompson, Chief Security Engineer at Transatlantic Airlines. I need to closely monitor Flight 447. Possible structural impairment in progress. Mr. Thompson, the controller replied, a woman named Patricia in a firm and experienced voice. We are tracking 447. All systems report normality. What is the nature of your concern? Marcus looked at the data on the screen. Pressurization fluctuation had increased in the last 15 minutes. Small peaks. Nothing alarming to those who didn't know what to look for. But Marcus knew. The aircraft has a history of structural fatigue in the upper compartments. Combined with pressurization fluctuation, it may indicate expanding microfractures. I need the captain to make an immediate manual inspection. Understanding. Passing on the information. While Marcus expected, Flight 447 crossed Indiana's airspace. It was only 40 minutes left for landing in Chicago. Inside the aircraft, Vanessa Clark was in the corridor serving the last round of drinks when she felt something strange, a dry crack, almost imperceptible. She stopped and looked around. No one else seemed to notice. Probably just turbulence, she thought, and kept walking. But then it happened again, higher this time. Crack. Several passengers raised their heads. What was that? Asked a woman in row 5. Only the aircraft structure adjusting to the pressure. Vanessa responded automatically with her professional smile. Completely normal, but it was not normal. In the command booth, Captain Morrison had just received the tower message when all the panel warning lights began to flash simultaneously. Committed pressurization. Upper compartment, 3A. What the hell? James Chen, the co-pilot, was already driving the emergency protocols. Morrison took the communicator. Vanessa, I need you to go to the 3A compartment now and tell me exactly what you are seeing. Something in his tone made Vanessa drop the drink tray and run. When she arrived at the executive section, which saw her freeled in place, the cracking was no longer microscopic. It had expanded along the entire metal frame of the upper compartment, forming an erectious line almost 30 centimeters. The structure was visibly deformed, bowing inward under the atmospheric pressure. Captain, Vanessa's voice trembled. We have a serious problem here. Describe. The third compartment it's cracking. I can see the metal structure yielding. Passengers around, they started to panic. The plane is breaking, shouted someone. Everyone will die, another shouted. Bradley ran to help Vanessa contain the panic, but he was pale with fear himself. In the cabin, Morrison and Chen exchanged a tense look. Starting emergency descent, Morrison said, her voice now urgently loaded, reducing altitude to decrease differential pressure. He triggered the emergency frequency. Chicago Tower Flight 447 declaring an emergency. Confirmed structural failure. Requesting absolute landing priority. Copied. 447. Authorizing emergency approach. Track 10R released. Rescue teams. In Miami, Marcus listened to everything through the open line with the control tower. Her heart hammered her chest. Jennifer was beside him, his hands covering his mouth. My God, Marcus, you were right. But Marcus felt no satisfaction in being right. It only felt the overwhelming weight of 189 lives hanging over a wire. Captain Morrison, Marcus said for the open frequency, here is Thompson again. I need to keep the speed below 400 km/h. Any additional vibration can accelerate the fracture. Copy, Morrison answered, and for the first time his voice showed genuine respect, reducing to 380. Inside the plane, Vanessa watched horrified as the crack kept growing up, slowly, but visibly, and then she remembered. The fat man, the engineer she had humiliated and expelled. I hope this flight will be quiet, Miss Clark. He knew from the beginning. Vanessa's legs almost failed when the realization hit her like a runaway train. Bradley, she said, her voice barely passing a whisper. That passenger I removed, who was he? Bradley looked at her confused, trying to calm hysterical passengers around. What do you mean, who was it? His name, Vanessa shouted, losing his composure for the first time in his career. Bradley pulled the company's tablet and checked the removed passenger manifesto. Marcus Thompson. Why? Vanessa pulled the tablet out of his hands and typed the name in the company's internal system. What she saw on the screen made her collapse against the corridor wall. Marcus Thompson position, Aerospace Security Engineer clearance, Level 9, Maximum Technical Authority, Specialization, Structural Integrity of Commercial Aircraft. She had expelled the only man on the whole airport that could have avoided that catastrophe, the man who had tried to warn them, and she had publicly humiliated him and removed from the flight. No, Vanessa repeated, sliding down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, the tablet falling from her trembling hands. Bradley knelt beside her. Vanessa, are you okay? I killed us all, she whispered, tears starting to drain on her perfectly make-up face. I kicked out the chief engineer. He tried to warn me and I kicked him out. The aircraft began to shake violently as Morrison began the emergency descent. Oxygen masks fell from the ceiling. Passengers shouted, children cried, and Vanessa Clark, the commissioner who always had absolute control of her cabin, was having a complete collapse in the executive section corridor. But in Miami, Marcus Thompson was not thinking of revenge or satisfaction. He was calculating descent angles, approach speeds, and fracture propagation rates. "Captain," Marcus said calmly at the emergency frequency, "when it is 1,500 meters in altitude, it manually dismiss the booth. It will be uncomfortable for passengers, but will equalize the pressure and stabilize the structure. This is against all the protocols," Morrison replied. "I know," Marcus said, "but trust me, I designed this plane." There was a long break. Then Morrison replied, "Copy. I will do as you say." 3 minutes later, at 1,500 meters in altitude, Morrison manually discredited the cabin. The effect was instantaneous. The vibration stopped. The crack stopped growing. The structure stabilized. Passengers had difficulty breathing for a few seconds until oxygen masks compensated, but no one died. And 7 minutes later, Flight 447 landed on the 10R track of Chicago International Airport with a strong but safe impact. Fire trucks and ambulances already expected, but it was not necessary. All 189 passengers landed unharmed, except for Vanessa Clark, who had to be carried out of the aircraft by paramedics after suffering a full panic attack. And while the passengers were evacuated, Captain Morrison looked out the cabin window and saw something on the onboard computer screen. A new message from the operations department. "Captain Morrison, Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson asks him to preserve the aircraft for full investigation. He will be in Chicago early tomorrow for personal inspection." Morrison turned off all the systems and leaned back in the chair, exhausted. "James," he told the Keo pilot, "remember never to doubt an engineer, especially if he's the guy who designed the damn plane." James Chen just nodded, still shaking with adrenaline. And in Miami, Marcus Thompson finally hung up the line with the control tower, pulled the cell phone and typed a message to Daniel. "There will be a little delay, champion, but I'll be there tomorrow. Promise is promise." Jennifer looked at Marcus with a mixture of admiration and relief. "You just saved 189 people." Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, I just did my job." But the two knew it was not true. Marcus Thompson had not just done his job. He had saved the same people who watched his humiliation in silence, including the woman who humiliated him. And tomorrow, when he arrived in Chicago for the meeting with the board, it would no longer be the fat man who didn't fit in the chair. It would be the man who prevented one of the greatest aerial tragedies of the decade. But Vanessa Clark, she would never be the same. The next morning, Marcus Thompson landed at Chicago International Airport under a constant rain. He had not slept, but it was not tired. It was focused. At 9 a.m. at point, he entered the corporate office of Transatlantic Airlines in downtown Chicago. Jennifer accompanied him, carrying a thick paste with all the technical documentation they had prepared. The reunion room of the 12th floor was crowded. Directors, executives, lawyers, and surprisingly, 3 representatives of the Federal Aviation Agency. Everyone got up when Marcus entered. "Mr. Thompson," said Richard Caldwell, CEO of Transatlantic Airlines, a 60-year-old man with impeccable white hair and a $3,000 suit. "Please feel." Marcus sat at the head of the table, not because I had asked, but because Caldwell had specifically appointed to that chair, the chair of honor. "Before we start," Caldwell said, his solemn voice, "I would like to say, on behalf of the entire board and each employee of this company, thank you. The Lord saved 189 lives yesterday." The whole room applauded. Marcus only nodded, uncomfortable with attention. "I did what any engineer should do," he said simply. "No," Patricia Gomez intervened, one of the FAA representatives. "You did much more than that. You identified a critical structural failure, warned the appropriate authorities, and coordinated a perfect emergency response even after it was," she paused, choosing the words carefully, "unfairly removed from the flight." The silence in the room was heavy. Caldwell cleaned his throat. "Mr. Thompson, we reviewed the security videos of the airport and also the video that circulated on social networks. The treatment you received from Commissioner Vanessa Clark was unacceptable, completely contrary to our corporate values." Marcus looked at Caldwell with a neutral expression. "And what does the company want to do about it?" "Mrs. Clark was suspended indefinitely as we conducted a complete investigation," said Amanda Rios, the corporate lawyer, who had called Marcus the day before. "She also underwent a psychological assessment after the incident. Doctors recommended prolonged medical leave." "She collapsed," Jennifer whispered to Marcus. "I read in the report you sent me." Marcus nodded slowly. "And Captain Morrison?" Caldwell exchanged a look with Patricia Gomez before answering. "Captain Morrison is being praised for his quick and effective response during the emergency. He followed his instructions to the letter, Mr. Thompson. Saved that plane." "He did his job," Marcus corrected, "just as I did mine." Patricia Gomez leaned forward. "Mr. Thompson, FAA is opening a complete investigation into the entire Series B447 aircraft fleet. His technical recommendations of 2021 were reviewed and, frankly, should have been implemented immediately. She looked straight at Caldwell, who deflected her embarrassed look. The budget issue that prevented implementation will be investigated separately, Patricia continued. But I want you to know that your technical specifications are now mandatory. All B447 aircraft will be inspected and reinforced in the next 90 days. Marcus felt something loose inside his chest. It was not victory. It was relief. How many aircraft are we talking about? 47, response-eyed Jennifer, consulting her tablet. In the transatlantic fleet and 6 other American airlines. Marcus made the calculations mentally. 47 planes, average of 180 passengers per flight, 4 flights a day. If only one of these aircraft had failed catastrophically. He didn't want to think about the numbers. Caldwell got up, walking to the window that offered a panoramic view of Chicago. Mr. Thompson, this company failed with you. Twice. First, we ignore your technical recommendations for financial reasons. Second, we allow one of our employees to treat him in a degrading and discriminatory manner. He turned, looking straight at Marcus. I can't undo what happened, but I can guarantee it never happens again. Therefore, I am announcing 2 immediate changes in the corporate policy of Transatlantic Airlines. Caldwell waved to Amanda Rios, who began projecting a document on the large meeting room screen. First change. All technical recommendations of the Aerospace Security Department now have immediate executive authority. No security recommendation can be postponed by budgetary reasons. Moderate applause in the room. Second change. Caldwell has continued. We are implementing a new mandatory training program for the entire cabin crew focused on diversity, inclusion, and treatment, worthy of passengers of all sizes and origins. The program will be developed and supervised by the Lord Mr. Thompson to accept himself. Marcus blinked, surprised. I'm an engineer, Mr. Caldwell. I am not a human resources expert. No, Caldwell said. But the Lord is someone who has lived on the skin, which means being treated as less than human because of his physical appearance. Its perspective is irreplaceable. Marcus looked around the room. He saw the expressions of executives who probably never thought twice about weight discrimination. He saw Jennifer smiling proudly, saw FAA representatives waiting for their answer. I accept, Marcus said finally, but with a condition, which Vanessa Clark participates in the training, and not as punishment but as an opportunity to learn and grow. The room was silent. Amanda Rios frowned. Mr. Thompson, Miss Clark publicly humiliated him. She deserves consequences, and she will have, Marcus answered calmly. But consequences need not be destructive. They can be transformative. He got up, walking to the window next to Caldwell. Vanessa Clark didn't wake up one day and decided to be cruel. It was conditioned by a society that treats fat people as inconvenient, as problems to be solved. It is just a symptom of a much larger problem. Marcus looked at his own reflection in the window. If I destroy her career, nothing changes. But if she learns, if she grows up, if she becomes a voice against the discrimination she herself perpetuated, it changes everything. Caldwell noted Marcus with an expression that mixed respect and something like admiration. The Lord is a better man than I would be, Mr. Thompson. I'm not better, Marcus said. I'm just tired of revenge. I prefer justice. 3 weeks later, Marcus was in Chicago again, but this time, it was not in a corporate meeting room. He was at the Daniel School gym, watching his son present the aerodynamic project they had built together. The small styrofoam plane in fairy wood flew perfectly through the gym, gliding gently before landing on the exact brand. The judges applauded. Daniel won the first place, and when the boy ran to hug his father, Marcus felt that moment was worth more than any engineering prize he had already received. You were right, Dad, Daniel said, his eyes shining. Aerodynamics is all about balance, not about weight. Marcus smiled and messed up his son's hair. Lesson learned, champion. That same night, while Marcus was returning to her hotel, her cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated but answered. Hello, Mr. Thompson? The voice was hesitant, feminine, familiar. Here is Vanessa Clark. Marcus stopped walking. Miss Clark, I know I don't have the right to call you, she said quickly, her choked voice. But I needed it. I needed to say I'm sorry. From what I did, from what I said, for all. Marcus was silent for a long moment. I accept your excuses. Vanessa let out a trembling sigh. I started the training program you created. It's being difficult. See what I did through the eyes of other people. Understand how much pain I caused, not only for the Lord but for so many other passengers over the years. Recognizing is the first step, Marcus said gently. The Lord saved my life. Vanessa co-entined, his voice breaking. After all I did, the Lord still saved my life. Why? Marcus looked at the night sky of Chicago, where planes crossed the enlightened horizon. Because all lives matter, Miss Clark, including yours. Vanessa began to cry on the other end of the line. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a lot of chances, Marcus said. What we do with them is that it defines who we really are. The call was closed, and while Marcus walked back to the hotel, he thought of everything that had happened. He had been publicly humiliated, expelled from a plane, treated as less than human because of your body, but he had not allowed it to define him. He had saved 189 lives, had changed corporate policies. He had created a program that would impact thousands of employees and millions of passengers in the coming years. And perhaps more importantly, he had shown that dignity is not something others can take from you. It's something you carry within you no matter what happens. Marcus Thompson was not just the man who didn't fit in the chair of the plane. He was the man who saved the plane. And this story spread. The original video of the humiliation, which had viralized with 47,000 views, was overshadowed by dozens of journalistic articles, interviews, and reports about the hero engineer who saved Flight 447. Vanessa Clark never became a commission again, but she became instructor of the diversity program that Marcus created, using her own experience as an example of how prejudices can be unlearned. Captain Morrison retired 2 years later, always crediting Marcus Thompson for saving his career and conscience. And Marcus? He continued to be what he always was, a brilliant engineer, a dedicated father, and a man who understood that true strength is not to retaliate cruelty with more cruelty. It is in transforming injustice into real change, because in the end, the best revenge is not to destroy who hurt you. It is proving that they were completely wrong about you, and then use this victory to ensure that no one else is treated the same way. If you liked this story of overcoming injustice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this.